Welcome back to Blake 7, where we begin in a cave on a mysterious planet. A woman in a nipple bump advertising costume appears demanding the appearance of Shirok. Shirok grumbles about the power of the race that she wields, but was also used to drag her wrinkled ass over here. Shirok is the keeper and NSFW is the guardian, who are in charge of dissipating the power through restoring the balance, however long that might take. A watch dissipation never boils, after all. But back to the main confrontation. Travis has 3 ships and is preparing to ambush the Liberator and get his revenge on Blake, made easier by the fact that the Liberator has been on the run for a while now. They're going to need 48 hours to recharge back to full power, otherwise they'll have trouble running or fighting. So they hide behind this planet, and since they have time to kill and the place is hospitable, Blake suggests having a look around. Not often you get to just land and have a stroll. Usually there's a whole lot of running and screaming and firing weapons. It's like being in Detroit. On the Federation ship, Travis is annoyed by his pilot, a mutoid, who thus requires blood serum regularly in order to function, preferably in those convenient green tubes she's got. But they're considered vampires to others, and you can be sure that's going to come up later. But on the planet, rather than the nice fresh air, Villa teleports Blake, Gan, and Jenna into the cave, the same one as before. We recognize the statues from earlier. Though I suppose the fact that the pair soon appear makes that obvious. But they vanish before anyone but Gan can see them. Powerful beings always like toying with people. They're like cats sometimes. But Gan has good eyes because he's the first to spot Travis's ship in orbit. Obviously, they've gotten out of the cave by this point, otherwise he'd have incredibly good eyes to see through solid rock. Well, it's a good thing he spotted that because every second counts.
Villa, full alert and get us up fast! Move it! They're right on top of you!
Much like Villa and his sheep. They're eventually teleported up, but unfortunately they still don't have enough power. They can't outrun Travis or outfight him. Zen suggests surrender, but Blake decides to play a game of how close can I cut the shields to help conserve power while they're being fired upon? Let the other ships run out of power kicking their asses. You know, the old Rocky Balboa defense.
Make him keep that defense shield in operation. Bleed his energy banks.
If Pursuit 3 keeps firing, it won't have enough reserve to put up its own defense shield.
Pursuit 3 is expendable. So is 2.
There's a man who doesn't have a world's greatest boss mug. Blake is going to have to work out a plan.
This is the Liberator, surrounded by 1, 2, 3 pursuit ships.
We'll need to get the ball past their defenders if we have any chance of staying in this game. One ship is already low on power, another has already started to exhaust theirs, so Blake intends to ram the third one, count on the Liberator's superior design to survive in better condition, and then turn this into a one-on-one fight. While Avon is skeptical of the plan's success, he has no better idea, leading to an interesting turn from the previous conflicts we've seen.
Have you got any better ideas?
As a matter of fact, no, I haven't. Does that mean you agree? Do I have a choice?
Yes.
Then I agree.
This mutual trust shows how they have evolved since those early horn-locking days. But just as the plan is about to be put to the test, things get all wonky, stuff stops working, and in general it reminds you that Blake 7 came out at a time when dropping acid and staring at a lava lamp was an entire evening's entertainment. You ever wonder why they call it a building, even when they've already finished it? Any more Fritos? Finally, Blake and Travis appear down the cave with the Nipple Queen and the Witch. A message is sent to all the ships telling them that right now, the ships are all locked down. Only life support is going to be allowed to continue until this whole song and dance is finished. Well, now that they're here, the Guardian is quite pleased. Always find the parts of your job that you can enjoy, I say. They explain the backstory of their little planet. Their civilization built more and more devastating weapons.
With each generation, there were fewer of us. The dead vastly outnumber the living.
Zombie apocalypse happens to the best of us. Finally, a weapon was made that would thoroughly wipe out the other side, so when they refused to surrender, it was used. But the victors had only won a ravaged planet, unable to produce future generations that weren't monsters or stillborn. Their race is now extinct. These two beings are the only legacy they have, and they've done this to make a point. Since Travis and Blake have irreconcilable views, it's going to lead to war, with 13 others dragged into it. 5 on the Liberator, the rest on Travis's ships. So to keep that figure as small as possible, it will be a duel rather than battle, although Blake's not a big fan of killing for entertainment. Still, Travis is the enemy. Might as well multitask. They get sword and machetes and told that the death of a friend is to be part of the lesson. Jenna and the mutoid, so that's good. The fight to the death includes a +1. Blake finds himself in the woods, alone for now, but the Guardian is bloodthirsty and uses the power to... whatever that is, it isn't good. That's not the face of a man who's enjoying himself. That leaves Blake helpless when Travis arrives, who beats him up and then prepares for the death blow before the Nipple Queen interferes and chastises the Guardian for this self-indulgence. Now she has to wipe the memories of that and drop them in the woods yet again. It shouldn't have to require constant respawning, lady. So Blake's got this do-over and watched by the crew of the Liberator, to Avon's surprise. This shouldn't be possible, he points out. But Callie says the aliens are just that powerful. Let's hope they don't decide to screw around any more than that. Q's enough of a problem without giving him the sentiment of that twisted old witch. Duel is an action episode, both the space combat and down on the ground, so it's no surprise that the directing duties were handed over to Douglas Camfield, who pulled off excellent Doctor Who action episodes such as The Invasion, and was the man who cast Nicholas Courtney as the Brigadier. This episode is noticeably short on music, though, normally done by Dudley Simpson. There's been a long-standing Doctor Who view among fans that this was because Camfield was jealous of Simpson's success and refused to work with him for a long time, based on a joking anecdote that Simpson told in Doctor Who about a dinner where Camfield was shocked by the size of Simpson's house. Except Simpson was fond of telling the story and changing the players, including the people that he did, in fact, continue to work for, that he joked that he could no longer work for because they were jealous of him. It's not that he was lying, he was just trying to tell a funny anecdote of the successful Australian and the gobsmacked English. The reality was that Camfield wasn't always a fan of Simpson's music and sometimes went with other composers, and Simpson was a very busy guy, so he wasn't always available. In Duel here, for example, it was nothing to do with the fact that they were both happening to be on this episode. It was that the location work delayed time to get it in for work on the music, and then another delay happened at the studio that pushed this back 2 weeks even further, and by that time Simpson just didn't have time to do the composing for the episode. He was also doing Doctor Who, remember? Anyway, that explains why there's a lot of canned music in this episode. Anyway, back to the fighting. Blake has fashioned some branches into a pair of spears for him and Jenna, while Travis works on making a trap. But both sides climb trees at night to protect themselves from the nocturnal predators that prowl the dark. Blake and Jenna muse about their general situation with the Federation, while Travis has a bit of fun prodding the mutoid about the past that she no longer remembers. Once you're modified, you forget everything about your past, but he actually knows that she used to be Kiera, and other things about her too. But she spoils his fun by not giving a damn. So he goes to sleep, leaving the bloodsucker on watch. And speaking of bloodsucking...
Blake!
I once woke up when my cat was chewing on my finger, but this is a lot worse way to get woken up.
I'm sorry, I went to sleep.
No, it's all right. It was my fault. We should have both stayed awake.
Yes, nothing like fatigue to help in a life-or-death fight for survival. Avon recognizes this and goes to get some sleep himself, and when called on that, throws this out there.
You ever cared for anyone? Except yourself?
I have never understood why it should be necessary to become irrational in order to prove that you care. Or indeed, why it should be necessary to prove it at all.
It's an interesting point. Avon is dismissing hollow gestures that exist solely to prove that you care. That in the end, they are not about the other person. They're about signaling that you care. Anyway, to prove how uncaring he is, Travis pokes more fun at the mutoid the next morning. She had to use a few of the bats to try to keep going, suck them dry. Though despite stories that mutoids are vampires, she did not touch Travis himself while he was vulnerable. Then again, his blood might be too cold for her. She tells Travis that without more, though, her function is going to begin to be impaired. But Travis comes from the school of suck it up and sends her off to nab Jenna, the bait for the trap. Blake knows this. Remember that when Blake wounded Travis, it was because Travis had laid a trap for a meeting days in advance, so he understands the MO of his enemy. But Travis makes one mistake, refusing to let the mutoid take any of Jenna's blood. She lacks the strength to cut through the vine holding up the trap until Blake and Jenna are both well clear of it, forcing Travis to fight Blake with their makeshift spears, while she ineffectually tries to fight Jenna. In the end, Blake has Travis at his mercy and chooses mercy. For his victory, the Liberator is fully recharged and will be allowed to get away before Travis has a chance to pursue. Travis is quite annoyed by this and doesn't give a crap that the dead mutoid is going to be returned to life. Attitudes that the Guardian revels in.
You remind her of our people.
He is just like our people. And like them, he learnt nothing.
That's why we're prisoners. You keep us prisoners, Yuruk.
Duel gets a stamp of recommended. While the overall plot is pretty basic, calling to mind Star Trek's The Arena, it does take a bit of time to do a character study along the way. And it's united by a common theme of resistance to change that's being imposed from without. Travis learned nothing from the lesson that the aliens were trying to teach him, remaining focused solely upon duty and revenge. The mutoid refuses all efforts to learn about her past life, much to Travis's annoyance. Villa and Gann attempt to use shame and guilt to change Avon, but Avon's retort demonstrates that logic and caring are not mutually exclusive. That simply because one doesn't engage in empty gestures, it doesn't mean that one doesn't care. It means that one cares enough to see the bigger picture. Avon goes to sleep when there's nothing that he can do, so that he won't be combating his own fatigue if a situation arises when he finally can do something. Avon is changed to someone who cares for others, but he does so on his own terms. Likewise, Blake doesn't need to learn the lesson about taking lives that was being taught. He already knows what it's like to kill, and to see one's comrades be killed. His choice to spare Travis does have a tactical benefit. Killing Travis will merely have him replaced by someone else who will pursue them. At least Blake knows all of Travis's tricks. But it also showed something about Blake. He said that he didn't kill Travis for another reason. He would have enjoyed it. Killing out of necessity is one thing. Killing because you merely want to makes you no better than your enemies. But most clearly, the Guardian learned nothing. For all her lamentations, she retains the bloodlust of her people and refuses to see the meaninglessness of it. At least Travis is motivated by duty as much as by a desire for revenge, but she desires violence and death for their own sakes. Even after the end of their race, she still has learned nothing.
How can you sleep with all this happening?
With all what happening? Blake is sitting up in a tree, Travis is sitting up in another tree. Unless they're planning to throw nuts at one another, I don't see much of a fight developing before it gets light.